Hey guys, tonight, we're traveling thousands of years into the past, to a land of towering temples, golden deserts, and mysterious pyramids, ancient Egypt. Now, when most people imagine ancient Egypt, they think of pharaohs, mummies, and magnificent monuments rising above the sands. But tonight, we're going to focus on something much more ordinary, sleep, because if you had walked into an Egyptian home after sunset, you might have noticed something that would seem very strange to modern eyes. There are no fluffy pillows, no memory foam, no soft cushions. Instead, resting beside the bed is a curved block of stone, and somehow, people slept on it, night after night. Generation after generation. At first glance, it sounds completely absurd. How could anyone possibly sleep comfortably with their head resting on stone? Was it simply the best they could do, or did the ancient Egyptians know something that we've forgotten? Tonight, we'll explore the surprising world of Egyptian sleep, uncover the secrets behind these mysterious stone headrests, and discover why something that looks incredibly uncomfortable may have been remarkably practical. But before we begin, take a moment to like the video, subscribe if you enjoy relaxing history content, and let me know where you're listening from tonight. Now lower the lights, get comfortable, and let's drift back to ancient. One by one, lamps are lit, the day is ending, and throughout Egypt, millions of people are preparing for sleep. Imagine stepping quietly into a modest Egyptian home. The walls are cool mud brick. The air carries traces of baked earth and river reeds. A small oil lamp flickers in one corner. Shadows stretch across the room. At first, everything seems familiar. A bed stands against the wall. A woven mat lies nearby. A wooden chest holds personal belongings, but then your eyes settle on something unusual. Near the bed sits a carefully carved object, smooth, curved, made entirely from stone. This is not decoration, it is not a statue, it is a pillow, or at least, that is what it was intended to be. To modern people, comfort usually means softness. We surround ourselves with cushions, blankets, and mattresses designed to cradle every part of the body. Ancient Egyptians viewed sleep differently. For them, a pillow did not need to be soft, its purpose was to support the head, nothing more. The stone headrest lifted the skull slightly above the sleeping surface, a narrow curved top fit beneath the neck. The design seems simple, yet generations relied upon it. Archaeologists have uncovered examples made from limestone, alabaster, wood, ivory, and even precious materials reserved for wealthy families. Some are plain, others display remarkable craftsmanship. Tiny carvings of protective symbols decorate their surfaces. Hieroglyphs sometimes run along their bases. The objects appear almost elegant, yet the mystery remains. Why choose stone? The answer begins with the environment itself. One by one, lamps are lit, the day is ending, and throughout Egypt, millions of people are preparing for sleep. Imagine stepping quietly into a modest Egyptian home. The walls are cool mud brick. The air carries traces of baked earth and river reeds. A small oil lamp flickers in. Ancient Egypt was hot, extremely hot. Even after sunset, heat often lingered within homes. Soft padded pillows trapped warmth. Stone remained cool. As temperatures stayed high through much of the year, a cool surface beneath the head may have provided genuine relief. But temperature was only part of the story. The Egyptians lived in a world filled with practical challenges that modern people rarely consider. Tiny insects emerged after dark. Mosquitoes hovered near the Nile. Other crawling pests wandered across floors and bedding. By raising the head slightly, sleepers may have reduced some of these nightly annoyances. Then there was cleanliness. Fabric absorbed sweat. Padding collected dust. Stone could simply be wiped clean. In a land where sand drifted endlessly through doorways and windows, simplicity had advantages. Yet perhaps the most fascinating explanation lies deeper, beyond practicality, beyond comfort, because ancient Egyptians believed sleep was not merely rest. Night was mysterious, dangerous, sacred. when darkness covered the land, the boundary between worlds seemed thinner. Dreams carried meaning, spirits moved unseen, gods whispered through symbols and visions, and in such a world, even an object as ordinary as a pillow could carry profound significance. The curved headrest did more than support the neck. Ancient Egypt was hot, extremely hot. Even after sunset, heat often lingered with it. It protected the head, the most important part of the body, the place where identity resided, the place where thoughts, dreams, and consciousness emerged. To protect the head was to protect the self. As the centuries passed, these stone pillows became deeply woven into Egyptian life. Children grew up seeing them, parents used them, grandparents used them. They became so normal that few would have questioned their presence. Just as we rarely question our own sleeping habits today, but somewhere in the darkness of an Egyptian night, as moonlight drifted through narrow windows and the Nile flowed quietly beyond village walls, a sleeper rested their head upon cool stone, and perhaps beneath the stars, they felt perfectly comfortable, far more comfortable than we imagine, because sometimes the strangest customs survive not because people endure them, but because they work. And as we move deeper into ancient Egypt, we'll soon discover that the bedroom itself held even more surprises than the pillow resting beside it. It protected the head, the most important part of the body, the place where identity resided, the place where thoughts, dreams, and consciousness emerged. To protect the head was to protect the self. As the centuries passed, these stone pillows became deeply woven into Egyptian life. Children grew up seeing them, parents used them, grandparents used them. They became so normal that few would have questioned their presence. Just as we rarely question our own sleeping habits today, but somewhere in the darkness of an Egyptian night, as moonlight drifted through narrow windows and the Nile flowed quietly beyond village walls, a sleeper rested their head upon cool stone, and perhaps beneath the stars, they felt perfectly comfortable, far more comfortable. The stone pillow remains beside the bed. Moonlight still spills through the narrow opening in the wall. Outside, the Nile moves silently through the darkness, carrying water that has sustained Egypt for thousands of years. Inside, an Egyptian family sleeps peacefully, and now that we've discovered the strange object supporting their heads, a new question emerges. What did their entire bedroom actually look like? Most people imagine ancient Egypt through the lens of temples, tombs, and enormous monuments, images of gold masks, towering statues, and treasure-filled chambers often dominate our understanding of the civilization, yet very few Egyptians lived surrounded by such grandeur. Most spent their lives in homes that were simple, practical, and surprisingly familiar. Tonight, as the village settles deeper into sleep, let us quietly step through the doorway and explore a room that has long since vanished beneath the sands. At first glance, the bedroom feels smaller than you might expect. The walls are made from mud brick, formed from Nile silt mixed with straw and baked beneath the relentless Egyptian sun. Their surfaces are smooth but imperfect, tiny cracks wind through the plaster like delicate rivers. The room is cool compared to the heat outside. Thick walls help keep the day's warmth from lingering too long after sunset. The ceiling rests low overhead. Wood is scarce in Egypt, so builders use palm trunks and bundles of reeds to support the roof. Everything inside serves a purpose. There is little clutter, no unnecessary decoration. Space is valuable. Every object earns its place. Against one wall stands the bed. The stone pillow remains beside the bed. Moonlight still spills through the narrow opening in the wall. Outside, the Nile moves silently through the darkness, carrying water that has sustained Egypt for thousands. Unlike modern beds, it sits higher above the floor. The frame is usually made from wood. Across it stretches a woven surface of leather strips, rope, or plant fibers. The construction allows air to circulate beneath the sleeper, offering relief during hot nights. The mattress, if one exists at all, is thin, Comfort comes not from softness but from clever design. Nearby rests the familiar headrest, waiting quietly for another night. Beside the bed may sit a small wooden stool, perhaps a storage chest containing clothing, jewelry, writing tools, or treasured family possessions. In wealthier homes, carefully painted boxes display scenes of birds, flowers, and river life. Even ordinary objects reveal an appreciation for beauty. An oil lamp flickers gently in one corner, its flame dances against the walls. The scent of burning oil mingles with traces of linen, reeds, and desert dust. The room feels, as the night deepens, the sounds beyond the walls begin to fade. The village grows quieter, only distant insects continue their endless chorus. A faint breeze slips through a window opening, stirring a hanging piece of linen. The room breathes, it rests, and as we stand in the soft glow of lamplight, something becomes clear. These bedrooms were not designed to impress visitors, they were designed to serve the rhythms of everyday life, to provide shelter from heat, protection from dust, a place where tired bodies could recover before another sunrise over the Nile. Simple, practical, comfortable in ways that often escape modern expectations, but hidden within these ordinary rooms were objects that would eventually puzzle archaeologists for centuries. Objects buried beneath sand, preserved by time, and waiting patiently to tell their stories. And in our next chapter, one such discovery will emerge from the desert itself, because the first time archaeologists uncovered an ancient stone headrest, they realized they had found something far more intriguing than a pillow. As the night deepens, the sounds beyond the walls begin to fade. The village grows quieter, only distant insects continue their endless chorus. A faint breeze slips through a window opening, stirring a hanging piece of linen. The room breathes, it rests, and as we stand in the soft glow of lamplight, something becomes clear. These bedrooms were not designed to impress visitors, they were designed to serve the rhythms of everyday life, to provide shelter from heat, protection from dust, a place where tired bodies could recover before another sunrise over the Nile. Simple, practical, comfortable in ways that often escape modern expectations, but hidden within. The bedroom has fallen silent, the oil lamp has long since burned out, the family sleeps undisturbed beneath the gentle darkness of an Egyptian night. For thousands of years, countless nights passed exactly like this. Generations lived, dreamed, worked, and eventually disappeared. Their homes crumbled, their villages vanished, the Nile continued flowing, the desert continued shifting, and slowly, the world forgot. Yet Egypt has a peculiar relationship with memory, unlike many ancient civilizations that faded almost completely from view. Egypt never entirely disappeared, its monuments remained, its temples endured, its pyramids stood stubbornly against the passage of time. And buried beneath endless layers of sand lay millions of silent clues waiting to be found. Among them was an object so ordinary that it might easily have been overlooked, a pillow, or at least, something that appeared to be one. Our story tonight shifts forward many centuries. The pharaohs are gone, the ancient language has been forgotten, empires have risen and fallen, the modern world has arrived, and across Egypt, archaeologists are beginning to uncover the remnants of a civilization that once seemed almost mythical. Imagine the scene. The morning sun hangs low above the desert horizon. The bedroom has fallen silent, the oil lamp has long since burned out, the family sleeps. A team of excavators works carefully among weathered ruins. Brushes sweep away fine grains of sand, small tools chip gently at hardened soil. Every movement is slow, deliberate, patient. Archaeology is rarely dramatic. Most discoveries emerge gradually: a fragment of pottery, a bead, a piece of wood, tiny pieces of a much larger puzzle. Then, one day, something unusual appears. At first, it does not look particularly important. Partially buried beneath centuries of dust sits a curved object carved from stone. Its shape is unfamiliar, its purpose unclear, The workers carefully clear away the surrounding sand. More of the object emerges, a flat base, a slender central support. A curved upper section. It resembles a miniature monument, or perhaps a ceremonial stand, certainly not a pillow. No one looking at it for the first time would immediately imagine sleeping on it, and yet that is exactly what it was. As more examples began appearing across excavation sites, archaeologists realized they had encountered something remarkably common in ancient Egyptian life: stone headrests. Not isolated curiosities, not rare ceremonial artifacts. Everywhere they looked, the objects appeared inside tombs, within burial chambers, among household remains, beside beds, near mummies. Across centuries of Egyptian history, the discovery created immediate fascination. A team of excavators works carefully because the objects challenged modern assumptions about comfort. Researchers accustomed to soft bedding struggle to imagine how these devices could have been used nightly. Many early observers described them as uncomfortable, even cruel. Some wondered whether Egyptians simply tolerated hardship better than modern people. Others speculated that the objects served entirely symbolic purposes, but the evidence continued accumulating. Where patterns appeared on surfaces, signs of regular use emerged. These were not decorative items gathering dust. They had been touched, handled, relied upon, night after night. The deeper archaeologists dug, the more intriguing the story became. Certain headrests were carved from ordinary limestone, others came from expensive alabaster, some featured protective inscriptions, others displayed images of gods, animals, or sacred symbols. One object might belong to a laborer, another to a noble, yet despite differences in wealth and status, the same basic design persisted. The shape remained remarkably consistent, a solution perfected long ago. There was another mystery as well. Many headrests appeared inside tombs, not beside. The deceased by accident, placed there intentionally, carefully, purposefully. This raised difficult questions. If the objects were merely practical pillows, why include them in burials? Why carry them into eternity? Because the objects challenged modern assumptions about comfort, researchers accustomed to soft bedding struggled to imagine how these devices could have been used nightly. Many early observers described them as uncomfortable, even cruel. Some wondered whether Egyptians simply tolerated hardship better than modern people. Others speculated that the objects served entirely symbolic purposes, but the evidence continued accumulating. Where patterns appeared, why preserve them alongside treasures intended for the afterlife? The answers remained elusive, but archaeologists knew they were dealing with something more significant than household furniture. The headrest occupied a curious space between practicality and belief, between everyday life and spiritual meaning, and that dual purpose made the artifact increasingly fascinating. As decades passed, museums around the world began displaying Egyptian headrests. Visitors stopped before glass cases and stared. Some laughed quietly, others winced at the imagined discomfort. Most left with the same question: how could anyone sleep on stone? Yet those reactions revealed more about modern assumptions than ancient reality. Because the Egyptians themselves likely found nothing strange about the object. To them, it was familiar, reliable, normal. The true mystery was not why they used it. The mystery was why we find it so difficult to understand. Tonight, as the desert winds whisper across forgotten ruins and moonlight settles over ancient tombs, those stone headrests continue telling their story, patiently, silently, waiting for us to listen. And as archaeologists uncovered more clues, they slowly began reconstructing something even more remarkable, not merely the object itself, but the lives of the people who rested their heads upon it every single night. So let us leave the excavation behind and return once more to ancient Egypt. Because the sun is setting over the Nile, and a typical night is just beginning. Why preserve them alongside treasures intended for the afterlife? The answers remained elusive, But archaeologists knew they were dealing with something more significant than household furniture. The headrest occupied a curious space between practicality and belief, between everyday life and spiritual. The stone headrests have been uncovered, the archaeologists have packed away their brushes, the museums have displayed their discoveries, but tonight, we leave the modern world behind once again. The desert winds reverse the passage of centuries, ruins become homes. Broken walls become living villages, silent tombs return to bustling life, and as the sun slowly sinks toward the western horizon, we find ourselves standing beside the Nile during an ordinary evening in ancient Egypt, not in a palace, not in a temple, not among kings or legendary rulers, just among everyday people preparing for another night. The day has been long, farmers return from fields nourished by the annual floodwaters. Boatmen guide their vessels toward shore, craftsmen finish their final tasks before darkness settles across the land. The heat of the afternoon begins to soften, a welcome breeze drifts across the river. For many Egyptians, this is the most pleasant part of the day. Children chase one another through narrow streets, neighbors exchange quiet conversations. The scent of cooking food rises into the evening air, flatbread bakes over small fires. Vegetables simmer in clay pots, fresh. Fish from the Nile crackles above glowing coals. As shadows lengthen, families gather for their final meal. The atmosphere feels peaceful, unhurried. The ancient world often appears harsh in our imagination. Unlike modern cities, ancient Egypt possesses no electric lights, no glowing windows, no illuminated streets. Night arrives fully, and with surprising speed, oil lamps flicker to life inside homes. Their small flames cast pools of warm golden light against mud brick walls. Beyond those circles of illumination lies darkness, deep and endless. The stars emerge one by one, soon they blanket the heavens. Without modern light pollution, the night sky appears astonishingly vivid. The Milky Way stretches overhead like a luminous river mirroring the Nile below. Many Egyptians pause to look upward. The heavens are not empty to them. They are alive with meaning, stories, gods, mysteries. As the evening deepens, activity slows, animals settle, voices grow quieter, doors close, families prepare for sleep. Inside a typical home, bedding is arranged carefully. A woven bed frame stands ready, linen sheets may be spread across the surface. Nearby waits the familiar stone headrest, cool to the touch, smooth from years of use. There is no ceremony in its placement, no hesitation. Its presence feels as natural as the bed itself. The sleeper lowers their body onto the woven surface. The head finds its resting place upon the curved support. Comfort comes through familiarity, a lifetime of practice. Outside, the sounds of the village continue for a while longer. A dog barks somewhere in the distance, water laps, yet night is not entirely peaceful. The darkness carries its own challenges. Mosquitoes drift from marshy areas near the river. Insects emerge from cracks and corners. Small animals move unseen through fields and pathways. The ancient world never fully sleeps. Something is always awake, something is always listening. And perhaps that awareness shapes Egyptian sleep more than we realize. People rest, but they remain connected to their surroundings. Sensitive to subtle sounds, changes. In wind, movement in the darkness, sleep is not complete separation from the world, it is a temporary retreat from it. Then come the dreams. For Egyptians, dreams are not random creations of the mind. They may contain messages, warnings, guidance, a glimpse beyond ordinary reality. A dream can be meaningful, important, even sacred. As sleepers drift deeper into unconsciousness, the boundary between waking and dreaming grows thinner. The stone headrest supports more than the physical body, it supports a traveler entering another realm, a realm of symbols and mysteries. Hours pass, the moon crosses the sky. The Nile continues its endless journey northward, and eventually, the first pale hints of dawn appear along the eastern horizon. Birds begin calling, the darkness retreats, another day approaches, the sleepers awaken, they rise, stretch, prepare for work. And the cycle begins again, simple, ordinary, yet deeply connected to the rhythms of nature, the rhythms of river, sky, and season. But as we spend more time in these quiet Egyptian nights, another question emerges: if stone headrests were so common, dawn has arrived once again over the Nile, golden light spreads slowly across the riverbanks, farmers step into their fields, boats begin gliding across calm waters, the sleepers of the night return to their daily routines, and yet one small mystery remains beside every bed: the stone headrest. By now, it may seem even stranger than when we first encountered it. After all, the ancient Egyptians were skilled craftsmen. They built monumental temples, carved intricate statues, created fine linen that was admired throughout the ancient world. Surely a civilization capable of such achievements could have invented a soft pillow. The surprising truth is that they absolutely could have. But for reasons both practical and cultural, softness was not always considered necessary. To understand why, we must momentarily set aside our modern expectations. Today, comfort is often measured by softness. The softer a mattress feels, the more luxurious it seems. The fluffier a pillow becomes, the more appealing it appears. Entire industries revolve around creating increasingly cushioned sleeping environments. Yet this idea is relatively recent. For most of human history, people evaluated comfort differently. A sleeping surface needed to provide support, protection, relief from environmental challenges. Perfect softness was rarely the primary goal. Ancient Egypt existed within a landscape that shaped nearly every aspect of life. The climate was hot for much of the year. The days could be intensely warm. Even after sunset, residual heat often lingered. Soft materials presented a problem. Dawn has arrived once again. They trapped warmth. Padding retained body heat. Stuffed cushions became uncomfortable during long summer nights. Stone, by contrast, remained cool. A limestone or alabaster headrest could offer a refreshing surface long after woven fabrics had absorbed the day's warmth. In a world without electric fans or air conditioning, that difference mattered. There was another challenge as well: dust, endless dust. The desert never remained entirely outside. Fine particles drifted through doorways. They entered homes with every gust of wind. Soft stuffed pillows collected dirt easily. Cleaning them would have been difficult. Stone headrests solved the problem elegantly. They required little maintenance. A simple wipe restored their surface. Practicality often triumphs where luxury struggles. Materials also played an important role. The Egyptians produced excellent linen from flax plants. Their linen garments could be remarkably fine. However, creating large padded pillows required substantial quantities of filling material. Feathers were available but valuable. Animal hair and soft stuffing materials existed. Yet gathering enough for widespread pillow production would require effort and resources. For many families, a carved headrest represented a durable solution that could last for generations. Unlike stuff bedding, it did not wear out quickly. It did not collapse. It did not need regular replacement. A well-crafted headrest could serve parents, children, and grandchildren alike. But practicality: their daily lives involved walking long distances, physical labor, and sleeping arrangements that emphasized posture rather than cushioning. A raised headrest aligned naturally with those expectations. What feels uncomfortable to one culture may feel entirely normal to another, and perhaps the greatest mistake we make is assuming that human comfort has always been defined in the same way. Imagine handing a modern memory foam pillow to an Egyptian farmer. Would he immediately prefer it? Perhaps, or perhaps he would find it strangely hot, unstable, even awkward. Comfort is not merely physical, it is learned, shaped by habit, influenced by environment, defined by experience. Generations raised with stone headrests likely found reassurance in their familiar shape, the curve beneath the neck, the cool touch against the skin, the predictable support offered every night. To them, softness may have seemed unnecessary, or even undesirable. As evening approaches once more, families across Egypt prepare for sleep, the same beds await, the same stone supports stand beside them, and while we continue searching for reasons, the people themselves remain blissfully unaware that future generations will question their choices. They simply rest, as their parents rested, as their grandparents rested, as countless ancestors rested before them. Yet the story of Egyptian sleep is far from complete. Because comfort was not the only challenge faced after sunset. When darkness settled across the Nile Valley, another powerful force shaped the design of homes, beds, and sleeping habits, the desert heat itself. And on many nights, the sun has disappeared. Once again, darkness spreads across ancient Egypt. But even now, long after sunset, the heat remains. It lingers in stone walls, it radiates from courtyards, it rises slowly from the earth itself, as though the desert refuses to surrender the warmth it collected throughout the day. For the people living along the Nile thousands of years ago, sleep was not simply about finding a bed, it was about finding relief. Relief from a climate that could be both life-giving and exhausting. And as we settle into another Egyptian night, we begin to understand that many of their sleeping habits were shaped by a single goal: staying cool. Imagine standing in a village shortly after sunset. The sky glows deep purple above the western horizon. The last traces of daylight fade behind distant palm groves. Children who spent the afternoon seeking shade now linger outdoors. Adults remain outside longer as well. No one is eager to retreat indoors too quickly, because after a long summer day, houses often hold on to heat. The coolest place is sometimes beneath the open sky, and across Egypt, evening becomes a time of transition. People sit in courtyards, neighbors exchange quiet conversation. The Nile breeze drifts through narrow pathways between homes. For a brief period, the entire landscape seems to exhale. The oppressive weight of daylight begins to loosen, yet true coolness arrives slowly. Ancient Egyptians understood their environment remarkably well. Over generations, they developed homes designed to work with nature rather than against it. Mud brick walls served as natural insulation. During the day, thick walls absorbed heat gradually. At night, they released it slowly. This simple architectural choice helped regulate indoor temperatures far more effectively than one might expect. Small windows also played a role. To modern eyes, they may seem restrictive, but limiting direct sunlight reduced heat accumulation. Every design choice reflected centuries of experience. People learned through observation, trial and error. Careful adaptation to one of the world's most demanding climates. Beds themselves contributed to nighttime comfort. Rather than sleeping directly on the ground, many Egyptians rested on elevated wooden frames. These raised beds allowed air to circulate beneath the sleeper. A gentle breeze moving under the woven surface could make a significant difference during warm nights. What appears simple often hides remarkable ingenuity. The familiar stone headrest offered another advantage. Its cool surface remained noticeably different from fabric that absorbed body heat. Placed beneath the neck rather than the entire head, it minimized contact while providing support. The result was a sleeping arrangement that encouraged airflow and reduced trapped warmth. Comfort through ventilation, not cushioning. The concept feels surprisingly modern. As darkness deepens, some families choose to sleep outdoors. This practice is particularly common during the hottest periods of the year. Flat rooftops become nighttime bedrooms. Mats are spread across open surfaces. Families gaze upward at constellations while waiting for sleep to arrive. Above them stretches one of the most magnificent night skies on Earth. Mud brick walls served as natural insulation. During the day, thick walls absorbed heat gradually. At night, they released. The stars appear endless, bright enough to cast faint shadows. Without artificial lighting, the heavens dominate the landscape. The experience feels both intimate and vast. a reminder of humanity's small place beneath the cosmos. The rooftop sleeper enjoys cooler air and gentle breezes, yet outdoor sleeping introduces new uncertainties, unexpected winds, insects, nighttime sounds from distant animals. The comfort of cool air comes with its own trade-offs. Still, many considered it worthwhile, particularly during Egypt's hottest months. Throughout the Nile Valley, countless small decisions helped people endure the climate: loose linen clothing, ventilated homes, elevated beds, stone headrests, even daily schedules adapted to the rhythm of temperature. Life moved in harmony with environmental realities. Rather than attempting to conquer nature, Egyptians often worked alongside it. There is a quiet wisdom in that approach, a recognition that comfort emerges not from controlling every condition but from understanding them. As midnight approaches, temperatures finally begin to fall, the desert cools. The breeze strengthens, palm fronds rustle softly in the darkness. Somewhere along the riverbank, water laps gently against anchored boats. Most of the village now sleeps peacefully. The struggle against heat has been won for another night, but staying cool was only one concern. Tomorrow, an Egyptian woman may spend hours arranging an elaborate hairstyle, braiding, oiling, decorating, creating a style that reflects status, beauty, and identity. And when evening comes, she will face another challenge entirely. How do you sleep without ruining the work of an entire day? Surprisingly, the answer once again leads back to the stone headrest, because for many Egyptians, it protected far more than comfort. It protected their appearance itself. The stars appear endless, bright enough to cast faint shadows, without artifice. The night breeze drifts softly across the Nile, palm leaves whisper in the darkness, families sleep peacefully upon rooftops and woven beds, enjoying the precious coolness that arrives after sunset. And among those sleeping figures is a woman who spent much of her day creating something that modern people often overlook when imagining ancient Egypt: her hairstyle. Tomorrow, when the sun rises again, she hopes it will still be perfect. This may sound like a small concern, but in ancient Egypt, hair carried significance far beyond simple appearance. It reflected status, identity, personal pride, and sometimes even religious devotion. Protecting it during sleep became surprisingly important. As we continue our quiet journey through the sleeping world of ancient Egypt, we discover another reason why the mysterious stone headrest remained so popular for thousands of years. Because while it supported the neck, it also protected something equally valuable: carefully arranged hair. Imagine a wealthy Egyptian woman preparing for an important gathering. The process does not take minutes, it may take hours. Servants carefully braid sections of hair, scented oils are applied. Decorative beads are woven into intricate patterns, fine combs pass repeatedly through every strand. The result is not merely a hairstyle. Cleanliness is highly valued, appearance matters, hair receives considerable attention. Some people wear their natural hair, others shave their heads entirely, many wear wigs, and Egyptian wigs can be astonishingly elaborate. Crafted from human hair, wool, or plant fibers, they often feature carefully arranged curls and braids. Some are so detailed that they rival modern salon creations, yet all of these styles share a common problem: sleep. Anyone who has spent hours arranging hair understands the challenge. Tossing and turning against a soft pillow can flatten curls, disrupt braids, create tangles, undo painstaking work. Now imagine investing hours of effort only to wake and discover it ruined. Ancient Egyptians sought a solution. The stone headrest provided one. Unlike a soft cushion that pressed against the sides and back of the head, the headdress supported only a narrow portion of the neck. Most of the hairstyle remained untouched. Braids retained their shape, decorative elements stayed in place, wigs suffered less damage. The design offered a practical advantage that modern observers often overlook. Suddenly, the strange object begins making a little more sense. The goal was not softness, the goal was preservation. and preservation mattered deeply in Egyptian culture, not only for hairstyles. For many aspects of life, the Egyptians admired order, balance, careful maintenance, whether tending fields, constructing buildings, or arranging personal appearance. They often valued stability over convenience. The headdress fit naturally into that mindset. It helped maintain what had already been kept. Children sometimes wore distinctive side locks, priests often shaved their heads, nobles displayed fashionable styles influenced by changing trends. Hair became part of how individuals presented themselves to the world. Protecting it was not vanity alone, it was self-expression. As evening falls across Egypt, countless people complete their nightly routines. Jewelry is removed, sandals are set aside, lamps burn softly in the darkness. Some carefully place wigs on stands before sleeping, others prepare to preserve elaborate braids through the night, and waiting beside many beds sits the familiar curved headrest, silent, reliable, unchanged, generation after generation. One can almost imagine the quiet satisfaction of waking at dawn to find every carefully arranged braid still intact, no hours of repair required, no frustrating tangles, no need to begin again from scratch. Such practical benefits rarely appear in grand histories, yet they shape everyday life, often more than kings or battles ever could. The deeper we explore ancient sleep, the more human these people become. Their concerns feel familiar. Their solutions feel clever. Their world feels less distant, and still, the night contains challenges beyond heat and hairstyles, for when darkness covered the Nile Valley, countless tiny creatures emerged from hiding, buzzing, crawling, searching, and for sleeping Egyptians, these unwelcome visitors could turn a peaceful night into an irritating ordeal. As we move deeper into the darkness, another hidden purpose of the stone headdress begins to emerge, one connected not to beauty, but to insects. Children sometimes wore distinctive side locks, priests often shaved their heads, the village sleeps, moonlight drapes itself across mud brick walls and quiet rooftops. The Nile glimmers softly beneath the stars, carrying its endless waters through the heart of Egypt. For a few peaceful moments, everything seems perfectly still. The air is cool, the darkness is gentle, the sleepers rest comfortably beneath the vast desert sky, and then, somewhere in the night, a mosquito begins to buzz. It is a tiny sound, almost insignificant. Yet for the people of ancient Egypt, it could become one of the most persistent annoyances of daily life. As we continue our journey through the sleeping world of the Nile Valley, we discover that nighttime comfort was threatened by far more than heat or uncomfortable bedding. It was threatened by countless small creatures that emerged after sunset, creatures that shared the same environment, the same homes, and sometimes even the same beds. The Nile made Egyptian civilization possible. Its annual floods nourished crops, its waters supported villages, cities, and entire kingdoms. Without the river, there would have been no ancient Egypt, but the Nile also created ideal conditions for insects. Marshes formed along its banks, pools of standing water remained. After floods, reeds and vegetation provided shelter for countless tiny creatures. As evening arrived, many of them became active. Mosquitoes were among the most troublesome. Their faint buzzing filled the darkness. They drifted through windows, hovered around sleeping families, and transformed otherwise. Every night required adaptation, patience, endurance. Mosquitoes were not the only visitors. Small flies appeared in homes. Beetles wandered across floors. Moths circled around oil lamps. The ancient world contained a constant background presence of insects that modern urban life often hides from view. At night, that presence became impossible to ignore. For those sleeping outdoors on rooftops, the situation could improve or worsen depending on the season. Cool breezes often kept some insects away, but proximity to water could attract others. Every sleeping location involved trade-offs. Comfort existed not in perfection but in choosing the least troublesome option. and this is where the stone headrest reveals yet another practical advantage. By elevating the head slightly above the sleeping surface, it reduced contact with bedding where insects might gather. The sleeper's face remained a little higher, a little less accessible. It was not a perfect defense, but in a world of small improvements, even minor advantages mattered. Ancient people often survived through accumulation of practical solutions. One choice alone rarely transformed daily life. Many small choices together made a difference. There were larger creatures as well, not necessarily dangerous, but unsettling. Lizards occasionally darted across walls, tiny rodents searched for food, geckos emerged after dark to hunt insects attracted by lamplight. Fortunately, geckos were often welcomed rather than feared by consumers. Life moved constantly in the shadows, yet Egyptians adapted remarkably well. They accepted realities that could not be entirely eliminated. Instead of expecting perfect control over their environment, they learned to coexist with it. This attitude appears repeatedly throughout their culture, whether dealing with heat, dust, floods, or insects. They sought balance rather than domination. There is something quietly calming about that perspective, a recognition that nature cannot always be defeated. Sometimes it must simply be understood. As midnight passes, the village remains mostly asleep. A few insects continue their endless wandering. The Nile reflects silver moonlight. Palm trees sway gently in the breeze, and beside countless beds rests the familiar stone headrest, simple, unassuming, serving multiple purposes at once, supporting the neck, protecting hairstyles, helping manage heat, and perhaps offering one more small advantage against the creatures of the night. Yet despite all these practical benefits, another question remains. If Egyptians slept on stone headrests, what exactly were their beds like? What material supported them through the long hours of darkness? Because the bed itself tells an equally fascinating story, one woven from wood, reeds, leather, craftsmanship, and centuries of ingenuity, and that story awaits us in the next chapter. Life moved constantly in the shadows, yet Egyptians adapted remarkably well. They accepted realities that could not be entirely eliminated. Instead of expecting perfect control over their environment, they learned to coexist with it. This attitude appears repeatedly through. The insects continue their quiet wanderings through the night. The Nile flows beneath the moon. The village sleeps, and resting within countless Egyptian homes is an object we have hardly examined at all, not the stone headrest, the bed itself, because while the headrest often captures our attention, it could not function alone. It depended upon a carefully designed sleeping surface beneath it. A surface that reveals just how inventive ancient Egyptians truly were. Tonight, let us move closer, closer to the woven frames that supported generations of sleepers, closer to the craftsmanship hidden within ordinary homes, and closer to understanding what it actually felt like to spend a night in ancient Egypt. At first glance, an Egyptian bed might seem surprisingly modern. It is raised above the ground. It has a frame. It is designed specifically for sleeping, but the similarities quickly begin to fade. There are no metal springs, no thick mattresses, no layers of foam. Instead, every component reflects the materials available along the Nile. Wood forms the foundation, yet wood is precious in Egypt. Unlike regions covered in dense forests, Egypt possesses relatively few large trees suitable for construction. As a result, wood becomes valuable. Craftsmen use local varieties when possible. For wealthier projects, imported cedar arrives from distant lands across the Mediterranean. Every piece is used carefully, nothing is wasted. The bed frame itself is often elegant despite its simplicity, for sturdy legs support a rectangular structure. Many surviving examples reveal remarkable craftsmanship. Some legs are carved into the shapes of animal limbs, lion paws, bull hooves, graceful forms that elevate an ordinary object into something beautiful. Even furniture intended for sleep reflects artistic skill. Yet the most important The sleeping surface. Instead of a solid platform, Egyptian beds typically use woven materials. Leather strips may be interlaced across the frame, plant fibers might be tightly braided, ropes can be woven into strong supporting patterns. The result resembles a finely crafted network, flexible enough to provide support, open enough to allow airflow. This design offers significant advantages in a hot climate. As air moves beneath the sleeper, heat dissipates more easily. The bed becomes naturally ventilated. Thousands of years before modern cooling systems, Egyptians had already discovered an effective way to make sleep more comfortable. It is a reminder that innovation often arises from necessity. A thin linen covering may be added, perhaps a simple blanket during cooler seasons, but the enormous mattresses familiar to modern bedrooms remain absent. The woven surface performs most of the work, and surprisingly, it may have been more comfortable than we assume. Anyone who has rested in a well-crafted hammock understands how woven support can adapt gently to the body. Egyptian beds operated on a similar principle, firm yet accommodating, simple yet effective. Of course, not every bed was identical. A farmer's bed might be functional and plain. A wealthy merchant could afford more refined materials, and within royal palaces, furniture reached extraordinary levels of sophistication. Some surviving beds from elite tombs display intricate carvings, decorative inlays, and masterful craftsmanship. The sleeping surface, instead of a solid platform, Yet even these luxurious examples preserve the same basic philosophy: elevation, ventilation, support. The core design remains remarkably consistent. This consistency tells us something important. Egyptians were not endlessly searching for better sleeping arrangements, they had already found one that worked. Generation after generation continued using the same principles because those principles solved real problems: heat, dust, insects, durability. The bed became an extension of the environment itself, a tool designed specifically for life along the Nile. As darkness deepens outside, a sleeper shifts gently upon the woven surface. The bed creaks softly, the head remains supported by cool stone. A breeze passes through an open window. The arrangement appears strange to modern eyes, yet for its owner, it feels entirely normal, familiar, comforting, reliable. That reliability matters, because sleep is one of humanity's most vulnerable states. Every culture develops ways of creating safety during those hours of unconsciousness. Ancient Egyptians built their sleeping spaces carefully, not for luxury, but for trust. Trust that the bed would support them, trust that morning would come, trust that another day awaited beyond the darkness. And while these beds served ordinary families well, not everyone in Egypt experienced the night in the same way. Some slept after long days of physical labor. Others slept within palaces surrounded by unimaginable wealth. The contrast between those worlds was vast, and in our next chapter, we will descend into the lives of the farmers and laborers whose work sustained the entire civilization. Because the woven beds rest quietly beneath the moonlight, the stone headrests wait beside them, the Nile continues its endless journey through the darkness, and while kings, nobles, and wealthy merchants often attract the attention of history, tonight we turn our focus elsewhere, toward the people who made ancient Egypt possible: the farmers, the laborers, the workers whose hands planted crops, shaped bricks, hauled stone, and sustained one of the greatest civilizations the world has ever known. Because when night arrived, their experience of sleep was often very different from that of the wealthy, yet in many ways, it was also far more familiar. Imagine an Egyptian farmer at the end of a long day. The sun has been relentless. For hours he has worked beneath its blazing light, tending fields nourished by the Nile's annual floods. His feet ache, his shoulders feel heavy, fine dust clings to his skin. The work is demanding, but it is also necessary. Without farmers, Egypt does not eat. Without their labor, the kingdom cannot survive. As evening approaches, he walks home along narrow paths winding through fields of barley and emmer wheat. The sky glows gold, birds settle among reeds near the riverbanks, a cooling breeze begins to stir. For him, this moment feels precious, the hardest part of the day is finally over. Vegetables, perhaps fish if the day has been fortunate, the food is simple but nourishing, conversation flows quietly, children share stories of the day, neighbors exchange news, the atmosphere feels warm, not because of luxury, but because of familiarity, the comfort of belonging. When darkness falls, exhaustion arrives quickly. Modern people often spend hours staring at glowing screens before sleep. Ancient laborers experienced something very different. Their bodies follow the rhythm of the natural world. They rise with the sun, work throughout the day, and when night comes, genuine fatigue follows. Sleep often arrives easily, not because life is easy, but because the body has earned its rest. The sleeping arrangements vary. Some families own raised beds, others sleep on woven mats spread across floors or rooftops. The distinction matters less than we might imagine. After 12 hours of physical labor, softness becomes less important than opportunity, a place to lie down, a chance to recover, a few hours free from responsibility. The stone headrest appears here as well, not only among the wealthy, not only within tombs and palaces, but among ordinary people living ordinary lives. Its practicality crosses social boundaries. Support is valuable regardless of status. Coolness is appreciated by everyone. Night treats rich and poor more equally than daylight sometimes does. Yet sleep for laborers is not always uninterrupted. Agricultural life carries responsibilities that extend. The sounds of the night become familiar companions. Cricket singing among reeds, water moving gently through irrigation channels, the distant calls of birds, the rustle of wind through palm trees. Such sounds do not disturb sleep, they become part of it, a natural lullaby repeated across generations. There is something profoundly human in these scenes. History often emphasizes extraordinary achievements, monuments, dynasties, treasures. But most Egyptians never built pyramids. Most never entered royal courts. Most lived lives centered on family, work, and survival. Their greatest daily reward was often the simple comfort of rest after honest labor, and perhaps that makes their sleep easier to understand than that of kings. We know what exhaustion feels like. We know the relief of finally sitting down after a difficult day. We know the quiet gratitude that comes when responsibility temporarily gives way to rest. Across thousands of years, those feelings remain unchanged. As midnight passes over the Nile Valley, countless laborers sleep peacefully beneath the same stars we see today. Tomorrow they will rise before dawn and begin again. The cycle continues, steady, predictable, enduring. But elsewhere in Egypt, beyond village fields and humble homes, another world exists, a world of palaces, servants, wealth, and power, a world where the ruler of Egypt prepares for sleep, and while the pharaoh may rest beneath finer linens and grander ceilings. Some of his nighttime habits may surprise us, because even kings, it seems, were not entirely separated from the humble stone headrest. The sounds of the night become familiar companions, cricket singing among reeds, water moving gently through irrigation channels, the distant calls of birds, the rustle of wind through palm trees. Such sounds do not disturb sleep, they become part of it, a natural lullaby repeated across generations. There is something profoundly human in these scenes. History often emphasizes extraordinary achievements, monuments. The farmers rest beneath the stars, their fields lie quiet beneath the moonlight. The Nile flows onward through the darkness, touching every corner of Egypt. From humble villages to magnificent palaces, night settles across the land without distinction, and somewhere beyond the mud-brick homes and narrow pathways of ordinary life, another sleeper prepares for bed, the pharaoh, the ruler of Egypt, the living symbol of divine authority. The individual whose image appears on monuments, whose commands shape kingdoms, and whose name echoes through history long after death, it is tempting to imagine that such a person experienced an entirely different world, a world untouched by the concerns of ordinary people. Yet when we enter the sleeping chambers of a pharaoh, we discover something more complicated, a mixture of unimaginable luxury and surprisingly familiar habits. Let us step quietly into the royal palace. The hour is late, servants move softly through long corridors illuminated by flickering oil lamps. The walls are decorated with painted scenes of rivers, gardens, birds, and lotus flowers. Columns rise toward high ceilings painted deep blue and dotted with golden stars. The architecture itself seems designed to mirror the heavens. Every surface reflects wealth, every object displays craftsmanship of the highest quality, and yet, beneath all this splendor, the purpose remains the same as in the farmer's home. To sleep, the royal sleeping chamber is spacious, far. At the center stands the royal bed. It is a masterpiece of craftsmanship. Its legs may be carved into the forms of lions, symbols of strength and protection. Gold leaf glimmers softly in the lamplight. Intricate decorations cover the frame. Every detail reflects the status of the person who sleeps there, yet the basic design remains familiar. It is elevated above the floor. Its surface is woven. Its structure promotes airflow. The principles we observed in ordinary homes remain intact. Even kings must contend with heat. Even kings appreciate cool air, and perhaps most surprising of all, even kings often used headrests. Some royal examples survive today, carved from precious materials. Decorated with extraordinary skill, yet unmistakably similar to those found in less wealthy households, the same curved support, the same practical purpose, the same recognition that a simple design can remain effective regardless of status. There is something strangely comforting about that continuity. The pharaoh may command armies and oversee temples, but when night arrives, he still rests his head much like countless other Egyptians. The differences become smaller in the darkness. Still, the pharaoh's sleep carries unique responsibilities. To ordinary people, dreams may offer personal guidance. To a ruler, dreams can influence an entire kingdom. Ancient Egyptians often viewed royal dreams as significant events. Potential messages from the divine, warnings, prophecies, signs requiring interpretation. A pharaoh, thousands of officials, countless laborious fields, temples, cities, and trade routes, all dependent upon decisions made by one individual. The weight of such responsibility must have felt enormous. Even the most luxurious bed cannot entirely remove that burden. Perhaps that is one reason why the sleeping chamber feels so carefully arranged. The linens, the artwork, the cooling breeze, the familiar headrest. Together they create an environment of order and stability, a place where the ruler may briefly set aside the demands of leadership. Outside, guards patrol quietly through moonlit courtyards. The palace gardens shimmer beneath starlight. Fountains ripple softly. Palm trees cast long shadows across stone pathways. The entire royal complex seems suspended between waking and dreaming, and within the sleeping chamber, the pharaoh drifts into sleep, a human being despite all titles, a sleeper despite all power, because night eventually reaches everyone. It enters every palace, every village, every home, and as the ruler of Egypt closes his eyes, he joins countless others traveling into the mysterious world of dreams, a world that ancient Egyptians took very seriously, for in their eyes, dreams were not merely stories of the mind, they were bridges, connections to something greater, something hidden, something waiting beyond the veil of sleep. And that is where our journey leads next, into the dream-filled landscape of the Egyptian afterlife. Thousands of officials, countless laborious fields, the pharaoh sleeps, the farmer sleeps, the merchant, the craftsman, the child, and the elderly grandmother beside the Nile all sleep beneath the same stars. Across Egypt, countless eyes have closed, countless minds have drifted away from the waking world, And now, as silence settles over the land, we enter a place that fascinated the ancient Egyptians perhaps more than sleep itself, the world of dreams. For many people today, dreams are curious experiences, strange stories created by the sleeping brain, fragments of memory woven together into impossible narratives. Interesting, perhaps, but ultimately fleeting. Ancient Egyptians saw them differently. To them, dreams could be messages, warnings, conversations, openings in the invisible curtain separating the human world from realms beyond ordinary perception. And if sleep was a journey, dreams were the roads that connected one world to another. Imagine lying in a quiet Egyptian home. The oil lamp has burned low, moonlight slips through a narrow window, your head rests upon a smooth stone headrest. The familiar sounds of the village have faded into silence. Gradually, wakefulness dissolves, the room disappears. The bed disappears, the physical world begins to drift away, and suddenly, another landscape unfolds before you, a landscape that feels real, sometimes even more real than waking life. You walk through unfamiliar fields. You meet people long since dead, you hear voices that seem to know things you do not, you witness events that have not yet happened. Such experiences left powerful impressions on ancient minds. The Egyptians believed that dreams occupied a special space between worlds, not fully earthly, not fully divine. For a few moments, the boundary between reality and imagination becomes blurred. Ancient Egyptians often embraced that uncertainty rather than dismissing it. In some temples, individuals deliberately sought meaningful dreams. They traveled to sacred sites hoping to receive guidance from gods. They slept in special locations, waited patiently, and interpreted whatever visions appeared during the night. This practice, sometimes called dream incubation by modern scholars, reflects just how seriously dreams were taken. A dream could influence decisions, relationships, even political actions. Dreams were not random entertainment, they were potential sources of knowledge. Ancient Egyptian texts contain records of dream interpretation. Certain symbols carried specific meanings. A clear river might suggest good fortune, a troubling image might serve as a warning. Animals, colors, actions, and locations all possessed possible significance. The dream world operated according to its own symbolic language, a language that people tried carefully to understand, yet dreams were connected to something even larger, the afterlife. Few civilizations devoted as much attention to life after death as ancient Egypt. The Egyptians believed that existence continued beyond the grave. Death was not an ending, it was a transition, a passage into another form of life. And because dreams involved temporary journeys beyond ordinary reality, they sometimes felt closely linked to this greater journey awaiting every person. It reminded people of how little they truly understood about existence. Even tonight, thousands of years later, dreams retain much of their mystery. Scientists study them, psychologists analyze them, neurologists examine brain activity, yet no explanation fully captures the experience itself. The feeling of standing inside a dream, the strange certainty that impossible events are somehow real. The emotions that linger after waking. The Egyptians would likely understand that. Fascination. As midnight deepens over the Nile Valley, countless dreamers wander through invisible landscapes. Some dream of family, some of rivers, some of gods, some of places that exist nowhere except within the sleeping mind. And perhaps, somewhere in the darkness, a sleeper awakens briefly and wonders whether what they witnessed was merely a dream, or something more, because in ancient Egypt, the line between those possibilities remained beautifully uncertain, and among the many beings believed to move through the darkness, some possessed names and identities of their own: guardians of night, protectors of sleepers, divine figures associated with darkness, dreams, and the mysterious hours before dawn. The gods themselves, and in our next chapter, we will meet them. It reminded people of how little they truly understood about existence. Even tonight, thousands of years later, dreams retain much of their mystery. Scientists study them, psychologists analyze them, neurologists examine brain activity, yet no explanation fully captures the experience itself, the feeling of standing inside a dream, the strange certainty that impossible events are. The dreamers wander across ancient Egypt. Thousands of sleeping minds drift through unseen landscapes. Some follow familiar paths, some encounter strange symbols, some awaken with memories that fade like morning mist, others carry dream images with them for years, and above them all stretches the vast Egyptian night, a night that was never considered empty. To the ancient Egyptians, darkness was alive, filled with unseen forces, sacred presences, powerful beings moving silently through the hours between sunset and dawn. Tonight, as we continue our gentle journey through the sleeping world of ancient Egypt, we enter the realm of gods, not the mighty rulers carved on temple walls in scenes of victory, not the grand figures associated with royal ceremonies, but the quieter deities, the guardians of darkness, the companions of dreamers, the divine beings believed to watch over the sleeping world. Imagine standing beside the Nile shortly after midnight. The village is silent, the moon hangs high above the river, palm trees cast long shadows across the sand, no human voices disturb the stillness. Yet an Egyptian observer would not describe this landscape as empty. Far from it. The night possessed its own inhabitants. Among the most important was the sky goddess Nut. During the day, she arched across the heavens above the world. At night, Egyptians imagined the sun entering her body as it disappeared beyond the western horizon. The sun then traveled through her during the dark hours before being reborn at dawn. Every sunrise became part of an eternal cycle: death, journey, renewal. For sleepers gazing upward at the stars, the night sky itself became a divine presence. The dreamers wander across ancient Egypt. Thousands of sleeping minds drift through unseen landscapes. Some follow familiar paths, some encounter strange. A living reminder that endings were often followed by beginnings. Then there was Ra, whose nightly journey through the underworld fascinated Egyptian imagination. While humans slept, Ra was believed to travel through dangerous realms hidden beneath the horizon. Each night brought challenges, mysteries, threats lurking in darkness, yet every morning he emerged victorious. His return reassured the world that order still existed. The sunrise was not merely beautiful, it was proof that cosmic balance had survived another night. This belief gave darkness a unique character. Night was not simply the absence of day, it was an active period filled with unseen events, a sacred interval during which divine journeys unfolded. Sleepers resting on stone headrests became participants in this larger cosmic rhythm. As Ra traveled through hidden worlds, so too did dreamers venture into mysterious realms of their own. Another figure often associated with protection was Biz. Unlike many Egyptian gods who appeared dignified and regal, Biz looked unusual, small, broad-faced, sometimes even humorous, yet his appearance concealed an important role. He protected households, children, mothers, and sleepers. Images of Biz often appeared within homes rather than temples. Families believed his presence could help guard against harmful influences during the vulnerable hours of night. One can easily imagine a small carving of Biz watching quietly from a bedroom corner while a family slept nearby. Nearby in Egyptian belief stood Tauret. She too served as a protector, particularly of families, childbirth, and domestic life. The boundaries between daily existence and divine protection often felt remarkably close. Gods were not distant abstractions, they occupied familiar spaces, homes, bedrooms, dreams, the very places where ordinary people lived. Perhaps that intimacy explains why Egyptian religion feels so connected to everyday life. The divine was woven into ordinary experiences, into meals, into work, into sleep itself. When an Egyptian child drifted into dreams, parents might believe protective powers watched nearby. When a farmer awoke from a vivid vision, he might wonder whether a message had been delivered. When a pharaoh dreamed of strange events, entire kingdoms could pay attention. The gods remained close, not necessarily visible, but present. As the night deepens, the stars continue their slow movement across the heavens. The Nile reflects silver light, villages remain silent, and somewhere, beneath roofs of mud brick and reed, sleepers rest with quiet confidence, not because the night is harmless, but because it is watched, guided, protected. At least, so they believe, yet even divine protection could not eliminate one powerful reality: death, the mystery that touched every life. And among the many objects Egyptians carried into their tombs, one appears again and again beside the dead. The stone headrest, which raises the gods watch from the darkness, the stars drift slowly across the heavens, the Nile reflects the pale glow of the moon, and throughout Egypt, countless sleepers dream beneath the protection of forces they cannot see, yet eventually, every dreamer faces the same destination: every farmer, every merchant, every artisan, every pharaoh, death. For the ancient Egyptians, this reality was never ignored, it was studied, prepared for, planned with remarkable care. Few civilizations devoted more attention to what happened after life ended, and it is here, among tombs and burial chambers, that the stone headrest reveals one of its most fascinating secrets, because archaeologists have discovered these objects not only in homes, not only beside beds, but beside the dead, again and again, century after century. The pattern is impossible to ignore. Why would an object used for sleeping appear inside a tomb? Why place a stone pillow beside someone who would never awaken? The answer begins with a simple idea: ancient Egyptians did not believe death was permanent. To them, death resembled a journey, a transition, a passage from one state of existence into another. The physical body ceased its daily activities, but the individual continued onward. In many ways, the afterlife was imagined as an extension of life itself, not identical, but connected, a continuation rather than an ending. This belief influenced nearly every aspect of burial. Food was placed inside tombs, clothing was included, jewelry accompanied the dead. The gods watch from the darkness, the stars drift slowly across. Tools, furniture, personal belongings, objects that had value during life were expected to have value afterward. The tomb became more than a resting place, it became a carefully prepared home for eternity, and within that eternal home, the stone headrest retained its purpose. At first glance, this may seem strange, yet consider how naturally it fits Egyptian thinking. If a person slept using a headrest throughout life, why should that support suddenly disappear after death? If sleep represented a temporary journey, perhaps death represented a longer version of the same experience. The connection between sleeping and dying appears repeatedly in ancient cultures. Both involve stillness. Both involve altered states of awareness. Both involve uncertainty about what lies beyond. For Egyptians, the stone headrest may have symbolized continuity between these experiences, a familiar companion for an unfamiliar journey. Many surviving examples found in tombs display extraordinary craftsmanship. Some are carved from alabaster so smooth it almost glows, others feature inscriptions requesting protection. Sacred symbols decorate their surfaces, images of gods appear alongside carefully written prayers. These are not ordinary household objects casually placed in burials. They carry meaning, importance, purpose. One particularly powerful idea involved rebirth, a quiet promise carved into stone. The placement of these headrests often feels deliberate, careful, intentional. Nothing inside an Egyptian tomb happened by accident. Every object occupied a meaningful position. Every detail reflected beliefs about eternity. When archaeologists uncover a headrest beside a mummy, they are witnessing more than a sleeping accessory. They are witnessing an idea, an expression of hope, a belief that existence continues, that awakening remains possible, that darkness does not always have the final word. As we stand within the cool silence of a burial chamber, illuminated only by flickering torchlight, the atmosphere feels strangely peaceful. Not because death is absent, but because fear is balanced by expectation, the ancient Egyptians prepared for eternity with remarkable confidence, and among the treasures, furniture, and sacred objects accompanying them into the next world sits the familiar curved stone support, quietly waiting, just as it waited beside beds during life, yet even this explanation does not reveal the full depth of its meaning. Because the headrest was not only practical, not only symbolic of rebirth. It carried layers of hidden significance woven into Egyptian beliefs, meanings that transformed a simple sleeping object into something far more profound, and in the next chapter, we will uncover the symbolism hidden within the headrest itself. A story carved into stone and preserved for thousands of years. A quiet promise carved in the tomb is silent, torchlight flickers gently across ancient walls, shadows dance among painted hieroglyphs that have watched over the dead for thousands of years. Beside a carefully wrapped mummy rests the familiar object we have encountered again and again throughout our journey, the stone headrest. At first, it seems simple, a practical support for the neck, a clever solution to heat, a way to preserve hairstyles. A useful object carried from daily life into eternity, but the deeper we travel into the world of ancient Egypt, the clearer it becomes that few things were ever merely practical. Objects often carried layers of meaning hidden beneath their ordinary appearance. And nowhere is that more evident than in the stone headrest. Tonight, we move beyond its physical function and explore the symbolism carved into its very form. To understand Egyptian symbolism, we must first understand something important about their worldview. Ancient Egyptians rarely separated the practical from the spiritual. The two existed together. A tool could serve a physical purpose while also carrying sacred significance. A piece of jewelry might be decorative and protective. At the same time, a doorway could be both an entrance and a symbolic passage between worlds. Meaning existed everywhere. The headrest was no exception. Imagine its shape. A sturdy base rests firmly on the ground. A slender column rises upward. At the top sits a curved support that cradles the neck. Simple, balanced, elegant, yet to Egyptian eyes, that shape may have represented something much greater. Many scholars believe the headdress symbolized elevation, the act of lifting the head above the earth. This mattered because the head held special importance. The tomb is silent. Torchlight flickers gently across ancient walls. Shadows dance among painted hieroglyphs that have watched over the dead for thousands of years. Besides, it contained identity, awareness, consciousness. To raise the head was not merely a physical action. It could symbolize awakening, renewal, the triumph of life over stillness. This symbolism becomes particularly powerful within tombs. The deceased lies motionless, yet the headrest continues lifting the head, supporting it, encouraging the possibility of future awakening, a quiet visual promise that death may not be the end. Another fascinating connection involves the horizon. In Egyptian thought, the horizon represented transition, the place where the sun disappeared each evening and reappeared each morning, a boundary between visible and invisible worlds. Some researchers have noted that the curved shape of certain headrests resembles stylized representations of the horizon itself. Whether intentional or not, the comparison feels striking. A sleeper rests upon a miniature horizon, balanced between darkness and light, between sleep and waking, between mortality and eternity. Protective symbolism also appears frequently. Many surviving headrests feature carvings of sacred animals, deities, or magical inscriptions. These decorations were not chosen randomly, they served as guardians. Silent protectors standing watch during vulnerable hours. Sleep left individuals exposed. Dreams carried uncertainty. The afterlife contained unknown challenges. Protection mattered. The headrest became a small fortress of symbolism surrounding the sleeper's most important feature. The head. One particularly intriguing image appears on some examples. the dwarf-like protective deity Biz. His unusual appearance may seem almost playful to modern viewers, yet his role was serious. He guarded homes, protected children, watched over sleepers. When his image appeared on a headrest, it transformed the object into something more than furniture. It became a guardian, a companion through the darkness. There is also symbolism in the material itself. Stone endures, wood decays, fabric wears away, but stone survives. In a civilization deeply concerned with permanence and eternity, durability carried symbolic weight. A stone headrest suggested stability, continuity, resistance against the passage of time. Perhaps that is why so many survive today. The Egyptians chose materials that reflected their desire for lasting existence. As midnight deepens beyond the tomb walls, one begins to appreciate how many layers of meaning surround this seemingly simple object. A practical tool, a symbol of rebirth, a protective charm, a representation of awakening, a reminder of eternity, all existing simultaneously. And perhaps that complexity explains why the headrest remained part of Egyptian life for so long. It satisfied practical needs while speaking to deeper hopes. The best designs often do exactly that. They solve immediate problems while quietly reflecting larger human desires. Comfort, safety, continuity, meaning. The stone headrest accomplished all four, yet despite its symbolism, the object remained connected to the physical realities of everyday life. People still slept on it, night after night, and as we continue exploring those nightly experiences, another question emerges: did sleeping this way actually affect the body? Could these unusual supports influence posture, health, or physical well-being? The answer leads us into the fascinating intersection of ancient Egyptian habits. The torchlit tomb fades behind us, the carved symbols grow distant, and once more, we return to the quiet bedrooms of ancient Egypt. A woven bed waits beneath the glow of moonlight. The familiar stone headrest rests patiently at one end. For thousands of years, countless Egyptians placed their heads upon these supports and drifted into sleep, night after night, generation after generation. By now, we understand many of the practical and symbolic reasons behind their use, but another question remains: what did this unusual way of sleeping do to the human body? Did it help? Did it harm? Or did ancient Egyptians simply adapt to something that modern people would find unbearable? Tonight, we explore sleep through a different lens, not through religion or archaeology, but through health, posture, and the quiet relationship between the body and rest. Imagine an Egyptian laborer preparing for sleep after a long day beside the Nile. The woven bed creaks softly beneath his weight. The night air drifts through the room. He lowers himself carefully and places his neck upon the curved stone support. At first glance, it seems uncomfortable. Modern pillows surround the head. Stone headrests support only a small area beneath the neck. The sensation would feel unfamiliar to most people today. Yet familiarity plays an important role in comfort. What seems strange to one culture can feel perfectly natural to another. The head remains elevated. The neck stays relatively aligned. The sleeper is less likely to sink into soft material. In some respects, this resembles certain modern ergonomic principles that emphasize support over softness. Of course, this does not mean stone headrests were ideal for everyone. Human bodies vary, preferences differ. What works well for one person may not suit another. Yet the persistence of the design suggests that many Egyptians found it acceptable, if not genuinely comfortable. There is also the matter of airflow. Soft pillows cradle the head. Stone headrests leave much of it exposed. In a hot climate, this difference may have reduced overheating during sleep. A cooler sleeper often rests more comfortably. The Egyptians may not have understood the science behind temperature regulation, but they certainly understood its effects. Experience can teach lessons long before formal explanations exist. Another interesting possibility involves hygiene. As we discussed earlier, fabric absorbs sweat, oils, and dust. Stone does not. a smooth headrest can be cleaned quickly. In a world filled with sand and heat, maintaining cleanliness becomes easier. Good hygiene does not guarantee good health, but it certainly contributes to it. The sleeping position itself likely varied. Some Egyptians probably slept on their backs, others favored their sides. The stone support could accommodate different habits depending on its size and shape. What mattered most was stability. The head remained elevated and supported. The body found its own comfortable arrangement around that foundation. Yet there were limits. We should avoid imagining the headrest as a miracle device. Ancient Egyptians experienced aches and aging, physical strain from demanding labor. A stone support could not eliminate those realities. It was simply one element within a larger system of living adapted to local conditions. Still, there is something fascinating about the contrast between ancient and modern assumptions. Today, comfort often means softness. The ancient Egyptians sometimes pursued comfort through structure, support, airflow, durability. Their priorities were different because their environment was different. Neither approach is inherently right or wrong. Each reflects the needs of its time. As the hours pass and sleepers across Egypt drift deeper into rest, the stone headrest continues performing its quiet task. Holding the head, supporting the neck, remaining unchanged while dreams unfold, simple, reliable, enduring, and perhaps that endurance explains why the design survived for so many centuries. Yet even the best sleeping arrangements could not eliminate every danger waiting in the darkness, for beyond the walls of villages and homes, the Nile Valley held mysteries of its own. Night belonged not only to dreamers and deities. It also belonged to creatures, hazards, and unseen threats. Moving through the shadows, and in our next chapter, we will step beyond the bedroom and into the nighttime dangers that lurked along the banks of the Nile. Aging, physical strain from demanding labor, the sleeper rests peacefully, the stone headrest supports the neck, the woven bed creaks softly beneath the shifting weight of dreams. Inside the home, everything feels calm, safe, protected, but beyond the mud brick walls, another world awakens, a world hidden by darkness, a world that belongs not to people, but to the Nile itself. Tonight, we leave the bedroom behind, we step quietly into the Egyptian night. And as our eyes adjust to the moonlit landscape, we begin to understand why. Darkness inspired both wonder and caution in ancient Egypt. The Nile was the heart of Egyptian civilization. It provided water, food, transportation, life itself. Without the river, Egypt could never have existed. Yet the same river that sustained millions also carried risks, especially after sunset. Imagine standing beside the Nile at midnight. The moon hangs above the water like a silver coin. The river glimmers gently beneath its light. At first glance, the scene appears peaceful, almost dreamlike. The air is cool, the breeze soft, palm trees sway lazily along the banks, but appearances can be deceptive. Beneath the dark surface of the water, unseen creatures move silently, fish glide through moonlit currents, turtles drift through patches of reeds, and somewhere below, hidden from sight, larger animals patrol the depths. One of the most feared was the crocodile. Ancient Egyptians knew these powerful reptiles well. They lived alongside them for thousands of years. The sleeper rests peacefully, the stone headrest supports the neck, the woven bed creaks softly beneath the shifting weight of dreams. Inside the home, crocodiles could remain nearly invisible until the final moment. A calm stretch of water might conceal a dangerous predator. During daylight, vigilance was important. At night, it became even more essential. Darkness transformed uncertainty into a constant companion. The riverbanks held other challenges: uneven ground, hidden holes, sharp reeds. A simple walk became more complicated when visibility disappeared. Without lanterns or modern lighting, even familiar paths could feel unfamiliar. Every shadow concealed possibilities, every sound demanded attention. The night required respect. Then there were snakes. Egypt was home to numerous species, some harmless, others highly venomous. During the day, many sought shelter from the heat. At night, they became more active. A snake crossing a pathway could appear suddenly and silently. Ancient Egyptians observed these dangers carefully. Knowledge of the environment became a form of protection. People learned where to walk, when to travel, what signs to notice. Survival often depended upon awareness, yet physical threats were only part of the story. Darkness also affected the imagination. The human mind naturally fills unseen spaces with possibilities. A distant movement becomes suspicious, an unfamiliar sound becomes mysterious. Even today, a quiet house can feel different at midnight than it does at noon, but unpredictable. As villagers slept, guards sometimes remained awake, boatmen anchored their vessels carefully, travelers avoided unnecessary journeys. The darkness belonged to itself. Most people preferred waiting for sunrise, and eventually, sunrise always came. That certainty provided comfort. No matter how long the night seemed, dawn remained inevitable. The eastern horizon would brighten, birds would begin singing. The familiar world would reappear, safety returned with visibility, order returned with light. This daily cycle shaped Egyptian thinking in profound ways. The victory of morning over darkness became one of the most important patterns in their understanding of existence. A reminder that uncertainty does not last forever, that fear eventually gives way to clarity. As the hours pass, the dangers along the Nile remain mostly unseen. The crocodiles continue their silent patrols, snakes move through reeds, the river flows onward beneath the stars, yet inside the villages, families sleep peacefully, protected by walls, by experience, by careful adaptation to their environment. And perhaps by something else as well, knowledge, the accumulated wisdom of countless generations, knowledge of how to build homes, arrange beds, stay cool, avoid danger, and sleep successfully within one of the most fascinating landscapes on Earth. But after exploring so many practical reasons for the stone headrest, we arrive at a fascinating turning point, because modern science has finally. The first light of dawn spreads across the Nile, darkness retreats, the dangers of the night slip quietly back into shadow, farmers awaken, boats return to the river, the ancient world begins another day, and thousands of years later, in laboratories, museums, universities, and sleep clinics, modern researchers continue asking a surprisingly simple question: what was it actually like to sleep on a stone pillow for generations? The answer seemed obvious: terrible, painful, uncomfortable. The very idea sounded absurd. After all, modern sleep culture places enormous importance on softness. Advertisements promise thicker mattresses, fluffier pillows, more cushioning, more padding, more comfort. By comparison, a carved block of stone appears almost impossible to defend. Yet as researchers began studying ancient sleeping habits more closely, the story became far more complicated. The first realization was simple: comfort is not universal, it is learned. Human beings adapt remarkably well to the environments in which they grow up. A person raised sleeping on soft mattresses may struggle with a hard surface. Someone accustomed to firm bedding may find an ultra-soft mattress uncomfortable. The body develops expectations, muscles adapt, habits form. What feels natural depends heavily upon experience. Ancient Egyptians spent their entire lives using headrests. They did not compare them to memory foam. There was no memory foam. The stone support was simply normal, and normal often feels comfortable. Researchers studying sleep posture have noted something interesting. Extremely soft pillows can sometimes create problems. If the head sinks too deeply, neck alignment may suffer. Poor support can contribute to stiffness or discomfort. But it does highlight an important principle: support matters, not just softness. The Egyptian headrest focused almost entirely on support. Its purpose was to hold the head in a stable position while leaving much of the neck exposed. Some modern ergonomic designs pursue similar goals, though with very different materials. There is also the question of temperature. Sleep scientists know that body temperature influences sleep quality. Overheating can interfere with rest, cooler sleeping conditions often improve comfort. Here, the ancient Egyptians may have enjoyed a genuine advantage. Stone remains relatively cool compared to fabric. During hot nights, that cooling effect could have felt refreshing, particularly in a climate where managing heat was a constant challenge. Another factor involves airflow. Traditional Egyptian sleeping arrangements encouraged ventilation, raised beds, open spaces, minimal padding. The entire system worked together. The headrest cannot be evaluated in isolation. It was part of a broader approach designed specifically for life in a hot environment. Modern researchers increasingly recognize that ancient solutions sometimes reflect. Some communities sleep on mats, others on hammocks, others on firm platforms, others on soft bedding. Human beings display remarkable flexibility. There is no single correct way to sleep. The Egyptian headrest reminds us that many assumptions we consider obvious are actually cultural preferences. As the morning sun rises higher above the Nile, the stone headrest begins to look different, not strange, not primitive, not misguided, simply adapted, a tool carefully shaped by climate, environment, beliefs, and experience. Perhaps that is why it survived for so long, not because Egyptians tolerated discomfort, but because the design solved real problems: heat, hygiene, hair preservation, durability, support. The more we learn, the less mysterious it becomes, and yet, in some ways, the mystery never entirely disappears, because every culture develops habits that seem perfectly sensible from within and completely baffling from the outside. The stone headrest is one example among many, a reminder that the past often feels strange only until we understand it, and after the morning sun rises higher over the Nile, light spills across the water, birds circle above the reeds, the villages awaken one by one, returning to the familiar rhythms of daily life, and as our long journey through the sleeping world of ancient Egypt nears its end, it becomes clear that many of our assumptions have quietly changed. When we began, the stone headdress seemed absurd, a curiosity, an archaeological oddity, something that belonged in a museum rather than a bedroom. But now, after traveling through Egyptian homes, tombs, dreams, palaces, and riverbanks, the picture looks very different. The stone headdress was never just a pillow, it was part of a carefully developed system. A solution shaped by climate, environment, culture, and centuries of experience, and perhaps nowhere is that more obvious than in the surprisingly practical side of ancient sleep. Imagine, for a moment, that you are an Egyptian living 3,000 years ago. Forget modern conveniences, forget air conditioning, forget electric fans, forget synthetic fabrics and climate-controlled bedrooms. You live in a land where summer heat can linger long after sunset, where dust drifts constantly through the air, where insects emerge after dark, where resources must be used wisely. Suddenly, the choices Egyptians made begin to make perfect sense. The raised bed allows air to circulate beneath the body. The woven sleeping surface remains cooler than thick padding. The open design encourages ventilation. The stone headrest lifts the head while reducing heat retention. Each decision addresses a specific challenge. Nothing is accidental. The morning sun, nothing is wasteful. The entire arrangement functions as a system. Modern people often separate comfort from practicality. Ancient Egyptians frequently combined the two. A comfortable solution was valuable precisely because it was practical. The best designs solved multiple problems at once. Consider the headrest again. It supported the neck, protected elaborate hairstyles, reduced contact with insects, stayed cool during hot nights, lasted for generations without wearing out, served symbolic purposes in religious life, and accompanied the dead into eternity. Very few objects perform so many roles simultaneously. that efficiency would have been deeply appreciated in a world where every possession carried importance. The same practicality appears throughout Egyptian life. Their homes were often designed to capture cooling breezes, their clothing reflected the realities of a hot climate, their furniture emphasized durability, even their daily schedules adapted to environmental conditions. This was a civilization built not through domination of nature, but through understanding it. The Nile taught patience, observation, adaptation. Success came from working with the environment rather than against it. Sleep reflected that philosophy. Instead of forcing comfort through excessive materials, Egyptians adjusted their habits to fit local conditions. There is something quietly elegant about that approach. The more closely we examine it, the more modern it begins to feel. Today, architects study passive cooling systems, designers seek sustainable materials, researchers explore low-energy solutions to environmental challenges. In many ways, these goals echo principles the Egyptians practiced thousands of years ago, not because they possessed advanced technology, but because necessity encouraged creativity. The result was a form of practical wisdom, knowledge accumulated slowly through experience, one generation learning from another, mistakes corrected over centuries, successful ideas preserved. As afternoon approaches, the villages continue their daily routines. Children play beneath palm trees, farmers work beside irrigation channels, craftsmen shape wood, stone, and clay. Life moves forward, steady and familiar. Yet tonight, when darkness returns, many of these same people will once again lie down upon woven beds and rest their heads upon stone supports. Not because they must, but because the arrangement works. That may be the most important lesson of all. History often surprises us when we look closely enough. What appears strange from a distance frequently becomes understandable up close. The stone headrest is a perfect example. At first glance, it seems uncomfortable. At second glance, practical. At third glance, ingenious. And perhaps that transformation mirrors the larger story of ancient Egypt itself, a civilization often reduced to pyramids and treasure, yet filled with thoughtful solutions to ordinary problems, because behind every monument stood millions of people living everyday lives, sleeping, dreaming, adapting, finding comfort in ways that made sense for their world. And now, after following them through the long hours of the night, only one question remains, a question that has quietly lingered since the very beginning of our journey, a simple question, a personal question, one that only you can answer. Would you sleep on a stone pillow? Night falls one last time over the Nile. The river moves slowly, as it always has. Palm trees stand still against the darkening sky, villages dim into quiet silhouettes, and somewhere in the distance, the ancient world settles into sleep for what feels like the final time in our journey. We have traveled far, through homes and tombs, through dreams and gods, through laborious huts and royal chambers, through danger-filled riverbanks and silent burial rooms. And always, in the background of it all, one object has followed us, quiet, unchanging, a simple curved stone resting beside countless beds, the headrest. At first, it seemed impossible to understand. How could anyone sleep like that? How could stone replace softness? How could comfort come from something so rigid? But as we step back now, the answer is no longer mysterious. It was never about softness. It was about function, about adaptation, about a world shaped by heat, insects, limited materials, and careful observation of nature. Yet even with all these explanations, one question remains, one that cannot be answered by archaeology alone. It is a question that belongs to imagination, to experience, to empathy. Across thousands of years, if you were to stand inside an ancient Egyptian home at night, you would see it clearly, a woven bed. A cool breeze drifting through an open window, the soft glow of an oil lamp fading into darkness, and beside the sleeper's head, a stone support, smooth, curved, unforgiving to modern eyes, and yet completely ordinary to them, because comfort is not only physical, it is also familiar. The body learns what to expect, the mind adjusts to what is normal, and over time, even stone can become part of rest. As we imagine this final scene, it becomes clear that ancient Egypt was not a world of strange, alien habits. It was a world of people, people who worked, people who worried, people who laughed quietly in the evening, people who slept, just like us, only their solutions were shaped by a different environment. A different set of challenges, a different understanding of comfort, and perhaps that is the real discovery beneath all of this, not that they slept on stone, but that they built a life where stone made sense. As the night deepens for the final time in our journey, we return to the central image that began it all. A quiet bedroom, a sleeping figure, and a curved stone resting beneath the head, no longer strange, no longer mysterious, but still quietly powerful in its simplicity, because it reminds us of something important. Human beings are adaptable, more than we often realize. What feels impossible in one time can become normal in another. What seems uncomfortable from a distance may be perfectly natural up close, and even sleep, the most universal human experience, can take many forms across history. The Nile continues to flow, the stars continue to watch, and the ancient world slowly fades into memory. But one final thought remains, lingering like a whisper in the dark. If you had lived in ancient Egypt, if you had grown up beside the river, if every night of your life had ended with your head resting on carved stone, would it still feel strange, or would it simply feel like home? And as we leave this world behind, drifting back toward the present, we are left with a quiet realization: the line between comfort and discomfort is thinner than we think, and sometimes, it is only time that decides which is which.